Okay, welcome everyone to the Flux Dev Meeting. It's May 14th.
Yeah. So light agenda so far. But I guess we could fill it out. Who has agenda topics? I talk a little bit about the testing for the SigStore stack, and we got a bunch of stuff merged into Nix packages. Deep D, Mateus, Kingdon, if you had anything that you wanted to chat about. Kingdon, I know you were talking with Tamo about some CFP stuff on the bug scrub.
Yeah, we could talk about that. We had some ideas for talk submissions. I know the deadline is coming up, and I saw um, Francesco posted about FluxCon. Also, that's cool.
Yeah. Yes, there's that. No, I'll take notes. And fix the or testing. Kind of curious. So this is a source controller, and API changes, and then we also have like what is going to be the ETE for this. And then anything else we should chat about? CFP stuff, SigStore stuff. Uh,
I can talk about a few projects, new projects under the Flux org we started this week as well.
okay. DT's got some updates on SSA, drift ignore. And then Mateus wanted to talk about some uh, new projects in the Flux org. Cool. So on CFP talk submissions, I didn't really have much here. I just know Kingdom that you had mentioned, or that you were talking with Tomo about Flux CLI versus Flux Operator MCP
Yeah,
for different agentic use cases.
yeah. One of the patterns that I've seen spoken about at length on Twitter and other places is that MCP is dead idea, and I don't know if I subscribe to that fully. But Flux has had a CLI for a lot longer than it's had an MCP, and all of the MCP is dead. People seem to be saying a CLI is the more efficient way to interact with an LLM with whatever it is on the other side of the CLI, either because it doesn't have to be loaded statically at startup time. I've heard the guidance that you should probably load and unload MCP servers depending on whether you're going to use them this session because they cost you tokens just to have them loaded. But a CLI doesn't have the same properties. You ask for the CLI and it's progressively discovered, however the LLM decides to do that. So if it just needs to call the CLI with a well-known command, then it takes only as many tokens as you see, and it's very cheap to do it that way. So we know that there is some prior art with the Flux CD skills repo about benchmarking. I went to look for the methods and I couldn't find like a scaffold or anything. So we talked about, doing a benchmark with methods and showing exactly uh, through certain use cases. We would have to design the use cases, which tools perform better, and how do you quantify that?
Mateus, do you know how if Stefan has his benchmark harness anywhere? Because I know that he was using a lot of like Claude driving keto subagents.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll have to ask
yeah.
him.
Um, I recall him mentioning during the FluxCon presentations that the benchmarks were very token heavy. Um, so that might be, and then I imagine that they're a little bit bespoke. But it would be a really good upgrade to get to a place where we have a reproducible benchmark that people can run and iterate on because that would be, especially with the skills being open source, right? Like if somebody can say, hey, like I went through the effort of running these benchmarks, and we've improved, you know, I don't know, like maybe API version upgrades or uh, detection of deeply nested customizations or something by 3% or something, then that'd be like easy to review. Um, and also easy to verify. But it's like verifying that and producing that like almost with like an untrusted party like requires running the benchmark at least twice. So because there's definitely not going to be any central CI that like allows you to test that. Or I guess we could have like an approval flow where you're like, yeah, okay, I'm going to spend a bunch of tokens trying to
Yeah.
reproduce this.
So one of the other unknowns is we all have access to Copilot, and the Copilot billing model is changing. Um, but at this point, we have some really solid access through the premium request model to use Copilot for things. So I'm not sure how much of that we can capture and use that in a benchmark flow, but that's
Yeah.
that's a resource we have that is, untapped every
Kingdom
month if
DP,
it's.
did you get your CNCF maintainer access to the Copilot Enterprise stuff that Ihor had blogged about, or do we need to put in a request for you guys?
I've got access.
You got you were added to the CNCF maintainer org?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have access through Microsoft. Would I
Okay.
need anything else?
I
I've not
guess
had.
not.
If you
I
don't need
guess
it,
not.
It
then
depends.
that's
Are they telling you to spend more tokens, or are they starting to clamp down yet? Because
Not yet, but
I'm load balancing
yeah,
subscriptions
yeah,
between the CNCF and NASA, and it's Copilot is really effective for that, actually. I've tried a couple of different tools, and I put them all down in favor of Copilot. So
yeah, the if you want access on your personal account to another enterprise subscription, DeepD, just let us know and we can open a service desk ticket or point you to the service desk ticket that you can open, whatever you prefer.
um,
This is just provided directly through CNCF.
mhm.
It's
Yeah.
actually a change from before because we used to get Copilot Business directly on the Flux CD org, and we had the ability to manage all of the settings. And Stefan and I were talking about it, and it's not really ideal now because a lot of the settings are centrally managed by CNCF. But it's also unclear to me what happens when like your account is maybe part of like multiple GitHub Enterprise subscriptions. So
Mm.
not really sure.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
the Kingdom and Kingdom B accounts so that I don't have to worry about that. But that is weird. I don't know if anyone else is going to do it that way.
Mm.
Yeah, I think honestly with the agent setups, it's going to be much more common now to have multiple GitHub accounts. Like I made an account named after the late and great Pepsi Evans, my dog. And that's like my like little like account now for when I need an automated action with GitHub with like no permissions on things. I just give that to my agent virtual machine. And then like it goes and does stuff and I go and review and reauthor and resign everything. But um okay. Well, CFP talk submissions in that category then would be like updating the notes. Wouldn't it be nice if our benchmark harness was somewhat reproducible? I think it might be expensive for people to run. The point of this would be so that the proposal would be to measure Flux CLI performance against Flux operator MCP. One
Here's
of the
here's
notes
a
in
cool.
here would be that the Flux CLI uh, is already baked, like usage patterns are already baked into Frontier model training data. So there is no overhead to allow agents to use it in tool calling. It's like token overhead. Yeah. On this topic, I would say the something I put together actually, I put together a demo yesterday. I'm gonna be wanting to make a video of using agent skills with a Flux CD agent that also uses the MCP server with Copilot as a harness. Um, and Copilot has this preview feature that's like a sandboxing feature. And in that sandboxing feature, you can deny reads to the kube config directory or any other kube configs that you would like to. And the sandbox prevents tool calls for like terminal commands from reading files that it's not supposed to. And what that means is that an info stealer from like a npm package update, hypothetically, that wants to get all of your Kubernetes certificates or your AWS SSO tokens and stuff would not be able to like exfiltrate those things as a result of prompt injection or a bad, npm package publish or something like that. Um, while at the same time, like still allowing the agent harness to have tool calls to the Flux MCP server for, read to the Kubernetes API or even certain write operations. And so there is a little bit of a segregation of concerns when you split out the tools into separate things. Whether or not you would be able to maybe run general tool calling with terminal commands with Flux CLI separately and then have Flux CLI be also used as its own tools that in the non-MCP path would maybe be an interesting question to ask because then you would be able to have like a check boxes or a sandbox configuration for what you intend to happen. Um, but yeah, I mean the sandbox can also like prevent just like entire binaries from being run. So, but you can't really do that with subcommands. So that might be something where a tool call thing like exec, but it only allows like a Flux CLI subcommand to run and not others. Might be an interesting area of exploration. Um, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, I think there are a lot of places where how good is your existing sandbox? And, is your agent running in a virtualized environment where you can trust that it doesn't have access to things it shouldn't have? Or do you need another layer of security at this point? That's um, a really interesting topic. And are you willing to spend tokens to get additional security? That might be another way to look at it. Um, it's a
yeah,
conscious trade-off,
I think
right?
like something that the MCP problem definitely solves is like splitting. It gives the harness configuration the ability to split up actions and decide whether or not an agent should be able to do that high level action independently of whether or not the actual identity that is being used by the agent, which is more than likely your actual identity realistically.
Right.
People are not splitting that stuff out right now.
We have a
Uh,
separate sandbox org with a separate Entra tenant. Well, no, it's the same Entra tenant, but it's a separate Entra login flow. So you can log into the sandbox org without having logged in to the production.
yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but that's not,
Ideally,
I don't think that's typical, right?
at orgs like NASA, right? Like you're gonna have people like really on top of their game, paranoid about this, like splitting everything off, and people should do that. Um, but then like your, average person picking up all of these tools and mixing them together
Won't have
will
done that.
will probably not have, and that's where I think like the majority of the benefit of having some like defense in depth in the agent harness
Mhm.
can provide a little bit of a layer of control. Like even just like people having multiple like roles to assume like in their AWS account or something is like something that people don't have, right? Like a lot of people
Mhm.
are just admin all the time. And so like this concept of like people needing like a sudoer type idea for any tool calling that they might need, it's like a kernel level sandbox is going to be able to prevent you from calling the Flux binary. And it's going to be able to prevent you from reading a kubeconfig or an AWS SSO token at the file level. It's going to be able to prevent you from making a network call to the wrong Kubernetes cluster. And you can express all of that in a kernel level sandbox config. But if you haven't if there aren't additional tools or like a plugin that's packaged into the agent harness that is aware of the structure of the Flux CLI, then the MCP server solves that problem in a way that the Flux CLI cannot. Because the Flux CLI's subcommands are in the Go binary. Like there's no way for your kernel level sandbox to say, like only allow the export command, but don't allow Flux install or something. Um, so this like client side configuration of what tools are allowed versus not. Um, there's definitely a gap there where like you would be completely reliant on the actual principle and role that are assumed. So that's an interesting difference. But I think the a neat exploration of an idea there would be, can you write a plugin for open code or Claude Code or Copilot or something that uses the same terminal command machinery but exposes the Flux CLI similar to the way that we granularly expose tools in MCP. Because then now you'd be giving the agent harness the ability to say, no, I will do this, but not this. And that could potentially constrain the behaviors and allow you to run a sandbox terminal command for other stuff that doesn't run Flux. And maybe the agent can use those tools because it sees, but there is a cost to doing that because the agent harness has to like be able to discover the tools and discover the skills. So, um, okay, very, very neat idea. Um, I think we should do it. What, who knows if it ends up at KubeCon, but like for sure, like it's something that we can talk about. It's something we can blog about. It's interesting R&D.
I have another idea for a submission. I'm not sure how closely tied it is to Flux, but we're using Flux and it's part of the story, so it would definitely get a mention. Um, it's about the ridiculous nonsense that we've had to build in order to properly make use of Inspector, AWS Inspector, for image scanning with all CNCF multi-arch images. Not that CNCF particularly pushes multi-arch, but if you do a survey of CNCF projects, you probably find 99% of them have support for multi-arch. And this is a problem for AWS Inspector. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but multi-arch images, the way the manifest is constructed, each of the sub-images could have different results from inspector. And inspector just arrives at this branch and box. It says, okay, well, you don't get runtime traceability because you used a multi-arch manifest. So now we have to engineer this absolute ridiculous nonsense. Um, there are layers to this problem. Like, for example, the pull-through cache is supposed to help you get the images into your ECR where they can be scanned and validated automatically by inspector. But it only works on a blessed list of upstream registries. Like there's like 10 of them that you can enable pull-through cache for. And if you're using any CNCF project that hosts its own registry, now you're on the hook to write a script to mirror those images yourself, um, and build a workflow for that. So I'm going to try to get permission to open source this thing, but I mean, from intellectual property perspective, I can talk about it, whether I can open source it or not, and I could describe it in enough detail that you could build it again. Um,
I think a CFP that talks through the UX and issues with registry operations would land nicely and be useful for people to hear a presentation about. Is the another area of really awkward support there is what registry APIs your registry supports, like whether or not it's OCI 1.1, 1.2 compliant or just 1.0, whether it has the referrers API, what CLI tools you're using to copy blobs back and forth, list things like tags. Because then when you get to like signatures and attestations and referred objects, like the support and behaviors kind of get really strange. Um, like depending on what tool you're using, a lot of stuff won't get copied over. Do you want that stuff? Do you not want that stuff? Are you going to do signature verification on the low side of an air gap or not? That kind of stuff. Um, and I think everyone ends up with like bespoke tooling to figure out how to get things over. And there's a bunch of tools that also transform the blobs and turn them into new things. Like they want to minify images or pull out binaries that aren't reachable or something. So that would be cool. Um, FluxCon as well. I think all of this, I think both of those CFP ideas would be good for FluxCon as well. So might be worth sending them that way. And if you don't think that it'll make it into the main track. Um, okay. Let's move on. I wanted to ask about testing for Sigstore and what you guys think. Because I have to basically like I wrote some end-to-end tests and a harness to stand up a private Sigstore stack and then set up all the PKI and like signing and verification setting like config files that you need in order to use a private Sigstore stack with Flux. Um, I got the contributors PR to source controller building and working. It needs a little bit of love. I actually found a bug with my original upgrade from V2 to V3 as well with just like local host registries, stuff that people won't run into until they start using the private thing. But there is a bug there where a client was missing some options that weren't passed through. Testing this stuff is expensive. Like I could spin up like another Kubernetes cluster alongside the existing kind one. All of the end-to-end tests right now across our controllers, they run serially, which are really slow. Every time you open a PR, you have to wait for these end-to-end tests. And if I add more of them, like at the end, and you also have to wait for a Sigstore stack, just like stand up, and are we going to generate new PKI every time, or do we want to just check in some test PKI? I could add a I could add a repo to the Fluxity testing org. I don't know what's the opinion here. Like, should I should I work on a test harness that allows the end-to-end tests to run in parallel? Like, uh, anyone have any ideas?
Uh, I we have been parallelizing some tests with multiple jobs recently. In package, for example, we split the unit tests in four jobs to make it faster.
Okay, so those are the Go units though, right?
Yeah, the Go modules, yeah, in Flux CD package.
And so with end-to-end tests, there's usually like a lot of kubectl wait. Um, I feel like if we there's definitely a cost to spinning up the end-to-end test. Definitely if I create a way to split out the controller end-to-ends where you can run individual kind clusters and segment them, then that would speed up. Because I think E2E
Yeah,
on
that's what
a
I
lot of
would
the
do.
repos is
Like,
one of the longest that people are waiting for, right? And that definitely slows down iteration, wouldn't you say?
yeah, I think the longest end-to-end tests we've kind of have at the moment are the Helm controller ones. They take like
Hmm.
20 minutes. And yes, they would benefit from doing just that, like really just split them in a few jobs and spin up a kind cluster for each one.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's really worth it, in
Have
my
you had
opinion.
many conversations about the minutes that we spend from a cost perspective? Is that a concern with GitHub Actions?
Well, it's paid by CNCF,
Yeah.
which used to be sponsored by GitHub, but I don't know if that's still true. Something have changed in that regard recently. I don't know if it's our entire GitHub enterprise or whatever we have from CNCF, but it has never been a really a concern, to be honest. The
The
budget
other
for
thing with
actions.
end-to-end is they run serially, which has the really nice property of having a controller log that ends up being roughly serial.
Mhm.
So that
They
like
can
helps with
be serial
determinism.
in each job.
Serial in each job. Yeah. You
Yeah,
think that's the best way? That
yeah.
way logs don't get mixed up, right? Because we could write the end-to-end test where it like applies all of the configs and then the controller just gets to work on all of them and then we kubectl wait all at the end, but then the grep would be not easy when you're actually reviewing the logs for like we just it's not like we have like a log stash and a
Yeah.
Kibana setup or
We have AI.
Loki or something. Like it's like a GitHub Actions log runner, and then put that in a CLI and grep it or something. So um
I clicked that Copilot button to find the issue in the logs a few times.
yeah.
It's been useful.
I haven't really been using that yet. I've been copying the logs and then processing them locally. Okay, great. Well,
I point my AI to the job. It
I'm
uses
gonna
the GHCLI.
so I think on the source controller thing, I'm gonna take a look at even just adding a second runner where the Kubernetes cluster for the SigStore E2E. Do you think that this is something that we need to run constant E2E on, Mateus? Like we don't have periodic tests.
We have periodic tests, for example, in package. Like we
Yeah.
run the cloud integration tests there every day once.
Yeah.
One for each of the three clouds.
Because
We
like
also
realistically, how many PRs are we getting like per week in source controller, right? So
Not
I
many.
would say maybe it is fine to just have it run on every single
Yeah.
commit.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
we do that for Helm controller, and it would definitely benefit from splitting into 2 or 4 jobs.
yeah, okay. Um,
Yeah.
let me look at just adding the job for source controller. I think the cluster bootstrap is going to be very different because I have to add like a OCI registry to the cluster and a bunch of stuff and then set up all the PKI. So it'll probably be a very different job. But while I'm in there, I'll look and see how long do the EDEs take for source controller and maybe split up the other one,
Are
like
you
the
gonna
one
have to
already
spin
there.
up all those 6 star things like Fusio, Record, whatever?
Yeah, there will be like a second cluster type. We'll spin up that with like a hack script, and then that'll prepare the EDE, maybe add a make target.
By
But
the way,
then
are you working on this? But I saw a PR from someone else. Are you like reviewing that PR and working
yeah,
with that
Stefan asked me to
person?
review it. You reviewed it as well.
Ah, oh, I saw. Now I remember you. Yeah, he asked you to help
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
it's just been like sitting in a corner on my machine as I keep iterating on the stuff, and I haven't given the contributor feedback yet. But for one, they need to run make generate. I think I just am gonna ask them to run make generate. We'll merge their PR, and then I want to do follow-up stuff on it.
Yeah.
Um,
Good
because like
idea.
they didn't write end-to-end tests. Of course.
Yeah, all
That's
our roadmap items at the moment for 2.9 are like with open PRs and people assigned to them, but they are like lacking us pinging those people. Deepti is the only person who's working on her roadmap item at the moment. Like we have, and you, of course, but there's
Yeah,
like
I
other
mean,
PRs
but
we need
also
to.
it's like I have like zero activity on this task because it's just been a bunch of me in a hole like poking at it. What I have determined on this is so it's really good what this person has proposed because it allows you to basically use a different trust bundle, but the trust bundle is not enough configuration to have control of your private SIG store verification. We're gonna need to add probably two more Booleans or two more um, configuration enums to the verify um, to make the usage of the transparency log as well as the timestamp authority. Those have to be controllable by the client. Right now, we are heuristically using the transparency log based off of whether or not somebody provides a public key. And he'd have left a comment in there from like 6 years ago or something that's like, it's actually possible to use a public key and a transparency log together. And right now you're not able to do that even on the public instance. Um, but definitely like even though there are use cases with like good defaults, like we need to give people the ability to override these defaults because stuff should not be controlled by the trust bundle. The client needs to like specify how it should behave, especially for this kind of a use case. So we're going to need to add more API fields. And then I looked at how to use the existing support. So when I merged V3, the SDK, you can like point it to environment variables to like get its trust bundle from somewhere else. And that uses Tough, the update framework. This would be like the controller level, like global config that you can override, but it will look very different because it requires having a Tough server inside of the cluster. It may be good to add a flag there that allows the controller to read its trust bundle from a secret globally, similar to the age key in customized controller. So this would be like a third mechanism, and documenting all of this would like be it's going to be a task. Uh, but it's kind of in the same regard of configuration that you went through recently for all of the um, workload identity stuff, like how you can override things in a couple of layers. So, um, but I will work on getting feedback to the contributor, putting up an example PR that carries their work with end-to-end tests and fixes. And then I will push up a plan issue for the things that need to happen before June. Um, okay, that's my update on Sigstore. Thanks for letting me talk. Deepti, you're next in the agenda with your PKG and customized PRs.
Yeah, so for the drift ignore rules, thank you so much, Matthias and Stefan, for reviewing all the PRs. I think it was merged earlier this week. It has all the improvements that we had spoken about, I think, a couple of weeks ago. We were discussing the 456. We ended up implementing all of them and taking all of those. So it looks pretty solid. It has like two different capabilities of drift ignore, drift strip and drift adopt. So if another controller has claimed ownership of any field, then we end up stripping it from the SSA payload. And if it's a client-side apply or if Flux is the sole owner, then we end up adopting the value of the field from the existing parameters. So yeah, that's the summarization of the capability. I have a customized controller PR that exposes the spec changes and the documentation associated with the package PR, which is currently open. And another follow-up for this would be the Flux diff customization CLI change to take the ignore rules into consideration. I haven't started working on that, but I'll do that next. But I
Oh,
think those are the two pending action
that's a
items.
really cool UX thing. I hadn't considered that. Um, wow. So that will cool. Okay. Because when comparing against the runtime state of the cluster, that's what that's for.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that it doesn't show all the ignored ones. So it's basically applied there as well. Yeah. Mhm.
Good, good one.
Mateus recently responded to somebody asking on Flux operator repo. They're like, hey, we want to move to using Helm release to reconcile Flux instance and everything. Like, is this an anti-pattern or not? And Mateus was like, honestly, I wouldn't recommend doing that. And it's just like stuff like what you're implementing. It's like it'd be really hard to do this properly and in a way that's like durable, like across the lifetime of Flux, like in Helm controller. But like the work you're doing in customized controller, it like all of the API machinery, it's like so many years of like really good technical decisions, and like there's just way less gotchas where you can do this kind of sophisticated stuff. But,
Yeah,
um,
by the way, thank you, Deepti, for addressing all my concerns there. That code for parsing the fields v1 was not easy to write, I'm sure. It's very complicated, but it does the right thing, and um, that I think that greatly improved the implementation. Uh, because now we can effectively not touch when we shouldn't and touch exactly when we should. The ignored fields. So thank you so much for following through with that. Very, very complicated work there. Thank you so much.
question for you two, Deepti and Mateus, because I haven't been able to review the actual implementation code and strategy. Um, like how how much of this is like stateful, where we require like us to infer about what might happen in the API when we talk to it? like reading things ahead of time, trying to decide on decisions. Things may have changed, and then now we change our behavior and talk to the API server and something might happen. Like, are we concerned about the statefulness uh of things? Like, of course, even if things are stateful and they might break, like it can be a better compromise to have mechanisms like that in Flux rather than having somebody deal with it in a shell script or on call. But like what where are the dragons like in this implementation that we need to be careful of?
Fields V1.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if individual fields within the SSA apply are being managed in like the parsing of things. But your question was more around after we've read something like a dry run object and like a race condition type of thing where some state changes after we've read it.
Yeah, and then even like Kubernetes API behaviors maybe evolving, fixing bugs, stuff like that in the future where the stateful comparisons might behaviorally cause breakage.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I
yes,
think.
like definitely fighting with things is always possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of that, I think at least the code flow is rather straightforward. I think we first get the dry run, then we get the existing object from the cluster. And when we do the SSA apply, it depends completely on what the ignore rules are, whether we adopt a resource or we strip from like Flux's perspective. The integration points are only the SSA patch and the SSA remove, like those two with the API server where if we are adopting, then we'll patch it, and if we are stripping, then we'll remove a particular managed fields, and the parsing aspect that Matthias mentioned. But
Okay. So the way that we parse things would hopefully be stable. The the stateful flow between read, parse, commit could be messed with, but hopefully it's a very short time window and Flux has good ownership of those
Yeah,
resources.
I think this pull request, this change is like adding more on something we already had. Like
Yeah,
we
because it's already there. Yeah, we
yeah, yeah,
already
like
read
we
parse right.
already read parse, yeah, we
Yeah.
already read parse right, and we just added more rules.
Yeah.
So
And but then like
and it's optional. That's like the
yeah,
like
you opt
it
into
doesn't.
it.
Yeah. You opt into
Like
yeah,
it. There's
yeah,
like no
somebody is
yeah,
using
default
these things
behavior
because they
change.
already
Yeah.
have
yes,
problems.
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah.
And it's really just a question of like, have we built the right shape thing where when somebody hits these strange edge cases, they might have 3 or 4 different needs, or maybe 1 or 2 of 6 different possibilities of things that they're trying to do. And like, does the thing that we built like actually help them solve some of those things in a way that isn't likely to badly interact with other systems that are trying to do weird stuff? Um,
I think there's one. So I like the only way like that things could go wrong here in this feature with the race between, let's say, an object gets written in etcd and then the delay between this object reaching the cache. Um, that let's say if the other controller was removing a field and then we didn't see that the because we read prior to that change, right? We think the other controller is the owner of the field.
mhm.
Then we remove and boom. This will never happen because usually the other controller will be adding fields. They'll not be removing them. We are the ones removing
Yeah.
our
Yeah,
opinion, right?
I suppose
So
it's worth documenting this, maybe so that it's not like a because this is the kind of place where you could maybe have like a very low severity CVE, or something. Like it's a strange behavior and it's like we should tell people like what the behavior is so that they're aware that things might interact with it,
yeah,
if
this
we
definitely
are
deserves a
doing
long
weird stuff. Yeah.
docs section in customization API docs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the PR that I have out, I have called a lot of these things out as important, note this, that. But if y'all can review it and let me know if there are gaps that we want to address, then yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah. And certainly the work that you're putting into this is so deserving of comprehensive review. So thank you. Um, okay. What about the UX of things? Like how this is bubbling up, like where, like we have, they're just fields that are right on our customization API that we own. So there's no like weird way for this to bubble up. People can template it into customizations from their Helm release or from their Flux operator resource set. They can parameterize things. Um, Hopefully there wouldn't be that many dynamic inputs in these kinds of ignore rules, but it's always possible. Like maybe somebody wants to ignore the left-hand side of a thing where the domain name or an organization name. So then they template that in from a, it seems like everything is doable, even if it's ugly.
Yeah.
I think there's a user doesn't get alienated from using the API fields improperly. People who have write access to customizations via Git or from the kube API can decide if things are ignored, so they get to choose. Um, that is, they're the owner of the customization, so they probably have the right to do that. Can it be used adversarially in any way? Like, you can't take away any ownership of a field that you wouldn't already have been able to have done before.
Take ownership of something, or could you say that again?
Like the addition of these drift ignore rules doesn't let the Flux controller make any ownership changes that it wouldn't have if you didn't control these fields. Like
Yeah,
everything,
so
the behavior change would be a subset of what the API operations were already doing.
Yeah, except that, yeah. So there are two main scenarios, right? So the strip scenario, in which if there is another third, if you've specified the drift ignore rules in your customization, and there is another controller, like primary use case for all of this was like HPA, VPA, cert manager type of scenarios. So if they have taken ownership of it, then yeah, that's the only scenario in which we will go and strip something. That is, if there is a third-party SSA controller or like a field manager ownership that has been taken for one of the fields that Flux originally owned.
If I drift ignore something that is not in the resource, or I try to drift ignore something that's not part of the valid API spec, two different cases, what
Yeah,
happens?
that's ignored. Yeah, I think that's ignored.
Yeah. Like it's just there.
Yeah, it's a no op basically.
And if I typo something, there's no way to see errors about that, probably.
You typoed something in your customization spec with respect to your ignored rules.
Yeah, say I'm like ignoring something and I forgot a vowel, then it would just not ignore it, but it wouldn't
Yeah,
tell me that the field is not part of the valid API spec, right?
right.
And the ignores have to be fields that are matching the API version of what? Is it the client API version? Is it the server side API version that gets converted to? It has to be the thing that's in the field managers.
So you can specify a path and a target. Like target is like a selector type thing where you can say this kind, this resource, this like selectors, and then that's the way it'll do the filtering. And then for all of those that match the selector, we would use the paths that are present in those objects.
And that it doesn't matter what API version it is, it's just anything. Because the server side apply field manager is keyed by API version,
Yeah,
but
so
it would just match anything.
yeah, whatever is given in the selector basically. So the selector was a standard this thing, and this was existing. So Helm controller also uses the same selector pattern, but it would whatever the selector's capabilities are. I think it was, uh, let me pull that up. Mm, Quickly, this one, I'll drop a link. So this was like existing JSON diff logic to give, yeah, group, version, kind, name, namespace, annotation selector, label selector. Those are the different things that you can select on.
So you can
Yeah,
select
so
on.
API version is there. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. API
Version
version
is
is
there.
in there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, group, version, kind, name, namespace, annotation, and label selector.
And so you can provide more than one of those selectors, which means that our drift ignore rules API can deal with multiple API versions of the same API group.
Technically, yeah.
So we can ignore, like, say a field name gets changed or a new field that has equivalent behavior gets added in a different API version. We can ignore both of them.
Mhm.
Um, and then, because right now the semantics for upgrading the API version in the field managers is really like, in my opinion, it's very incomplete. Like, you pretty much end up with like the lowest historical common denominator for API versions on any particular resource in Kubernetes, which is very annoying for projects who actually want to deprecate API versions. It's, I think, the main reason. I think it's a mechanical reason for why projects cannot actually drop APIs right now. Um, I
I
think,
remember Matthias making some improvements to package code around that for like
mm,
CRD, yeah, in just a couple of weeks before mine, I think.
yeah, like I would like to
Which
see upstream Kubernetes improve in the handling of API versions. It's probably going to be a really big mess in the next few years.
about the API version migration?
Yeah, I think that stuff we should at least be like appending field managers for new API versions as the API sees them begin to be interacted by controllers so that it's possible for controllers to upgrade how fields are managed and that it doesn't have to be like continuously downgrading to do field comparison. Um because like the really ugly stuff that we're doing in Flux Migrate right now, it's like so illegal. And the only reason that we can get away with it is because we don't remove fields. Um and there's no conversion logic as well, so it's like if we yeah, it's just so bad. Um and the only reason we do it in a codified way instead of telling people to manually do stuff is it's the only way to migrate. Like, um, is to just go in there and bump the API version with a patch, like in the field managers, because Kubernetes will never do it. So, like, Kubernetes has to figure that out at some point, or else it's going to be impossible forever for people to drop things. And like, not everything is going to back convert either. So there's probably cases where you're going to try to drift ignore something and then like the field manager is actually on the old stuff and the field wasn't present in the previous API, so it's just ending up in an annotation. You actually can't ignore it, and then it'll like Flux will just continue to apply it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
uh like the feature, even if we ship this and we support multiple API versions, like it seems like there would
This
be
is shipped in a
cases
patch, by the way. People are using
where
this.
you have stale field managers with old API versions and you can't actually ignore the field
Because the API version doesn't match. Basically,
because
there
the field
is
manager is not actually tracking that field because it's stale.
mm, kind of like an
Um,
orphaned.
yeah, I don't, is that something that's like covered in the test cases at all? It's pretty obscure, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's not covered.
I don't think we have anything with respect to like CRDs and like API versions inside of them. If you can just give me a few, uh, like the scenario, like this thing, I'll try to see if I can add it here.
Okay. I will send you a message in the Flux contributor channel
Sounds good.
with the use case, or maybe this would be better as a comment
Yeah, you
somewhere.
can comment on the PR, but it's closed. But either way, whatever is
Okay,
convenient for
cool.
you. Yeah.
I'll try to I'll leave a comment on GitHub and then send you a DM with a link to the comment.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good.
Um, okay. We Kingdom had to drop. It's currently 3 minutes past. Um, the only other thing that we had on the agenda was Mateus, you wanted to talk about some of the new projects.
Not super important. Can leave this for next week.
Okay. Do you have a high level list? Just so that,
Yeah, so it basically Flux CLI plugins, right? So we have RFC 0013
yeah.
that was merged and implemented a while back.
Uh-huh.
And now we have two official plugins
Yeah.
besides. So the one is Flux Schema, which we probably already talked about here in the meeting,
Yeah.
for offline validation of manifests, um, including cell expressions and everything. We we keep a bit it's like we keep a registry of schemas up to date in that repo, Kubernetes Gateway API, Flux Operator, and OpenShift, I think. Flux and Flux Operator and OpenShift. So yeah, there's that one. But the new one is we started this week, like 2 days ago. It's called Flux Mirror, which is for mirroring artifacts from within registries like OCI artifacts, Helm charts, container images. And the trigger was the Bitnami Charts Syncer project recently changed the license from Apache 2 to a license that only says Broadcom will sue you if you use this for products that aren't for anything not related to Broadcom products. So it's not even like a commercial license with a well-known name. It's just Broadcom will sue you. Take care. So we basically ditched it in one of our repos and decided to replace it with a project in Flux Mirror. So the coolest feature this project provides is converting HTTP Helm repos, Helm charts to OCI charts, which is what were using the chart syncer for before. Uh, we like OCI charts, we don't like HTTP charts, so we were converting a few and with chart
What
syncer,
repos
and
did we remove it from? Just these were Flux CD repos?
these are control plane repos.
Control plane repos of Chart Syncer.
Yeah, control plane IO fluxcd/charts. That repo was using chart syncer to sync Ingress Nginx, external DNS, DEX, and one more, I think. And those four are now synced. We removed Ingress Nginx there. So it's external DNS, DEX, and metric server. Yeah. Metric server, external DNS, and DEX. That's the ones that we were syncing from HTTP repos into OCI in GHCR.
Mhm.
Now we keep doing that, but with Flux Mirror.
This is a really good for to be included in what Kingdon was talking about with the registry ops um, use case, because when I did a security or a supply chain review of Scopio and Crane, there was a really big difference between Scopio and Crane. And there's also significant behavioral differences in how Scopio and Crane list things inside of a container registry, how they treat different media types, and what gets copied over. Um, and but then Crane hasn't been updated for certain behaviors for a while, even though it's kind of got the better supply chain. With Flux, we have a very good supply chain story for provenance and attestation. And I think we know how to we know the operational problems that people run into pretty well. So this is a very good plugin for people to use, even if you're not using Flux stuff. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I thought the same. That's why. Stefan wasn't even sure if we were going to fork chart syncer in the Apache version or whatever.
Yeah,
And I said, we need to make this proper.
yeah.
We need this, like, look at all the tooling we have in Flux. We have now CLI plugins, and we have Flux schema. And actually he said that this is a perfect use case for a plugin in the Flux CLI. So yeah.
And like every plugin, this stuff is usable even as its own standalone binary as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Standalone binary has, just like Flux schema, it has a GitHub action. So you can use the GitHub action from the repo of the project to install the binary and use it. So yeah,
It's
Flux
wild
Flux schema and Mirror have that.
how much you and Stefan ship these days.
I,
That's really cool.
honestly, it's him. Like, it's him. I don't know if he's vibe coding or not. I just press the green button of approve, honestly.
I don't think it's any question that Stefan uses agentic coding at this point.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
vocal about his techniques. He's up there with some of the most prolific contributors in the past decade of open source, and constantly plugged into people in the same, kind of community and caliber and level of contribution. And a lot of those people are also using agentic tools. Um, I think you and I are also trying to up our game and use agentic
Mhm.
tools. We don't have to be secretive about it in the Flux project.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I think we should be forthright that we are using these tools, and that we still promote a high level of review and ownership of everything and responsibility, for everything that we ship in the project.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
for sure.
like, ooh, I think Stefan, I wouldn't describe him as a vibe coder for sure. He's doing a lot of spec-driven development. I think he reviews everything before he ever even pushes it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
but yeah. Um, I I think I'm getting there personally. Like it's taking me a long time to wrap my head and feel comfortable about how to use these tools in a way that doesn't feel like a massive supply chain vulnerability waiting to happen. Um, from it's my responsibility to all of you as maintainers and contributors to like not let some prompt injection thing like, begin a supply chain attack that ends up on every 5G tower.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm starting to get there where I'm like, okay, I can use these tools to actually do work. But hopefully I can catch up.
yeah, same. I'm a
Yeah.
bit lazy to write very long specs, but I can write some very long prompts, just
Mhm.
not to call them specs with lots of sections and everything. No, it's just four
Yeah.
paragraphs.
Yeah. Even things like owning the copy, owning docs and stuff like that after the fact. It's like it's really tantalizing to just like take a bunch of output, from the tools and be like, oh, it looks good, sounds good, when it's like not good.
Yeah.
And
I
like,
think I compensate my laziness of not doing super detailed specs by looking at the code and iterating. Like, I don't let it, I don't let the final thing be bad, because I still read it. I still nitpick. Like, I
mhm.
change names of
Yeah.
things, like
Mhm.
things that other people at this point are like, yeah, you're the tech, you're an agent, you're the tech lead, you're supposed to review everything and ensure the technical quality of the project. No, it's
Mhm.
still me, it's still the human. Like, I don't do many agents. I can't let the code go, otherwise my life does not have meaning. So, so, oh yeah.
And like kind of wondering the very few people in the world who will have had the recording of this meeting on long enough to be part of the agentic Flux podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was the last thing in our agenda. At least I'm gonna stop the recording now. Where is this? I feel like I have to. They moved to the claim host button. I don't know where the claim host button is anymore.
Yeah,
It used to be
I
in the
never found it ever.
it used to be in the participants window, and then you had to click more next to your name, and then it would say claim host. But for oh, I am a host. It did that automatically. Or maybe Kingdom gave me it.
Yeah, I think you did.
Oh, okay. So the next thing I need to do then is I have to locate the stop record button, which for
Yeah,
whatever
I'm
reason.
trying to click the recording one